Well, welcome to our Inspire Talk, this time featuring Patricia Weerakoon. My name's Ron Irving. I'm the minister at St Matthew's Anglican Church at West Pennant Hills, and I'm really pleased to be able to host you. Patricia Weerakoon may be known to you, or maybe not. She's an Australian Christian sexologist. She was born into a Tamil Christian family in Sri Lanka, and she grew up on a tea plantation. She's married to Vasantha, and they have a son, Kamal, who's a Presbyterian minister. Would you welcome Patricia?
Thank you very much. And it's really great to be here with you. I'm just so excited to be with you, and I hope everyone here is just as excited as we look at Eros, intimacy, and what was God thinking about. You know, we are in a cultural moment of soul searching when it comes to sexuality and sexual behavior. And we have to ask ourselves this question: what God are we worshiping? Are we worshiping the God of Eros? Or maybe, just maybe, the God of the Bible has something to say about it? So what better way to start than to start by looking at our cultural moment? Sex truly is in the air. Or maybe it's more like saying, is it polluting the air? We are all aware of this. You know, we can look at this, I just picked from news headlines, and we can see that, you know, the schoolgirl who started the petition that went viral, and private school principals having to meet and what can we do about it? And the young staffer, Brittany Higgins in the Parliament House, and of course, the images of what they were doing at Parliament House. And the church is not immune either. I'm sure many have heard of all the problems that in the church, the sex problems in the church. Is it any surprise that our youth are struggling with mental health? Youth Survey 2020 shows how youth are struggling. Is it any surprise that a generation living in an online cyber world of algorithms and emotional starvation are actually in a sex recession, having less really intimate sexual relationship? So we all recognize something needs to be done. But what? What can be done? Maybe it's about learning to listen to women's voices, truly listen. Or maybe, as we all know, it's about consent. Not just no means no, but yes means yes. In that article, we read, you know, we need to teach our children about consent and living in an egalitarian society, in egalitarian partnerships, and developing proper modes of communication that involves teenagers in the throes of sexual desire, stopping and asking each other, "What would you like me to do, dear?" And maybe we could make an app, which, you know, let's make love. Oh, just a minute, let's pull that app out and do a swipe right and sign off on consent. We need to teach our children consent and how to behave and how to recognize patterns of coercion. This is very good. And of course we have to do it. Maybe even change societal norms as to what consensual relationships mean. Yes, they are good. But the question is, are they enough? Would that suffice? Remember, we are talking about teenagers whose brains are in what we sexologists, biologists call developmental dissonance, where the emotional brain Anyone who has a teenager knows that emotional brain. You know, when your little possum suddenly turned into an alien in the bedroom, you know, that age when the brain, the emotional brain is like, whoa, let me go, let me find an identity. I want to take risks. Mom, Dad, just get out of my face. And the cognitive decision-making brain doesn't mature till about 25. So in this stage, we are looking to teach our children these issues of consent. Maybe it's about teaching girls about what's called sexual fluency, about pleasure, about teaching girls that it's more than about consent, giving them a narrative to understand and honor their sexuality, to see their desires as something worthy and giving them the words, you know, giving them an understanding of their clitoris and their orgasms and the words to tell their partner about it when they are in the throes of sexual pleasure. Or maybe just stopping porn's going to do it all. I mean, we haven't got the time to talk about it, but we know that porn rewires the circuits, the good circuits in the brain, and makes people see each other as a commodity of no worth. This we know. This is the scientific research. So maybe just stopping this will give boys a language that is not the pornification of our culture. Or maybe with this gender ideology of today, it's about watching the ideology that has erased females and female spaces and devalued what it means to be a woman. Oh, there's more. Maybe consent and the narrative of pleasure and stopping porn and listening to women and providing safe places, maybe all that is not enough. Maybe, as Emma Wood said in that article, we need to recognize that the sexually permissive culture dominated by a recreational view of sex desensitizes young men, and I would say young women, to the seriousness of sexuality and of sexual assault. Maybe we need to reintroduce the significance of sexual intimacy. Maybe we need to be teaching a morality of sexual ethics. In that article we read, we need to recover the lost meaning of sex. Really? What is this lost meaning? Do we even know where to find it? You know, in Channel 9 60 Minutes program, I was listening to a school head boy say to the other boys in school, stop being boys, be human. Is that enough? It's not enough, he said. We need to be human. What does this mean? Or as the other article by Melanie Phillips suggests, there is a wider social pathology, a train wreck, very quickly quoting. Sex educators in school don't say, don't do it, but instead say, do it without any tiresome consequence. Boys are brought up no longer within a stable family background with strong role models. Chivalry is now patriarchal. This is the example our boys are getting, where sex is desacralized and reduced to little more than just a recreational sport. We are a society that has gone off the social rails, the sexual rails, if I may say so. Or, as Greg Sheridan has said, we need to explore our Christian roots. But how many people even understand what exploring Christian roots mean? See, these are the issues that we are now facing. We are facing all these. And then we look at a culture that we live in, a culture built on commitment to individual autonomy and a celebration of that personal, inward-looking personal authenticity that has to be found. And all this with no moral structure or truth, what some writers call a liquid culture. This is the culture we live in. So you're all sitting there going, right, we get it. That's the news articles. We've read all of them anyway. But an old subcontinental from Sri Lanka, a sexologist, for goodness sake, who are you? And what gives you a right to talk to us about sex with us? Well, let me tell you very briefly about who I am. You already know that's the tea plantation my father worked in. I was born in the tea plantation during the time when the British Raj ruled the Sri Lanka. We were a colony. And during that time, my first sex education was watching the dogs and the cats and the rabbits. Oh, can they reproduce? And the cattle. And my first exposure to sexual assault and inappropriate behavior, I remember this distinctly, was at a 12-year-old asking my mother, how come some of the Indian laborers have blue eyes? And my mother has forced to explain some of the relationships, if I might say so, of the British Raj and the Indian indentured labor. So that's my dad. And then I went to medical school, and yes, before you ask, that is a cadaver we were dissecting. No idea why we were having so much fun over it. But then I got married, and we went to Hawaii. That's where I really got passionate about sex. My professor was a sexologist. I was worshiping in a wonderful evangelical church. And I like to say that that's the time I was studying sex and worshiping in church and brought my twin passions of God and sex together. Went back to Sri Lanka. I was the only sexologist in the country for 6 years. Wonderful time with 20 million population, kind of busy. And then 32 years ago, we moved to Australia. 25 years I've been an academic with Sydney Uni, and that was when our graduate program in sexual health, for which I was the director, won the international award at the World Association of Sexual Health. So I was director of the program. I retired at the age of 65, which was 8 years ago, and I've spent 8 years talking, speaking, and writing about sex, which of course explains how I got gray. And I like to speak with the psalmist in Psalm 71, even when I'm old and gray, do not forsake me, God, till I declare your power to the next generation and your mighty acts to all who are to come. So that's why I'm so passionate about speaking about sex. Now, we've looked at all these issues and all the suggestions, and we've asked the question, what can we do? Is there something more? So I want to put it to you that there are two really important issues: the innate dignity of the body and the unique role of sexual intimacy in relationships. Let's look at the body first, the innate dignity of the body. Now, this is a picture of the heart as it develops when you are in your mommy's tummy. Two little tubes, two little tiny tubes. Now, if you put your hand on your pulse, you can feel your heart beat. And it started beating from the time you were in your mommy's womb, and it will beat till that last day when you say goodbye to Earth. Now, imagine those two little tubes are developing into that intricate 4 chambers that keep you going. Isn't that exciting? I love the human body. You know, your lungs, the alveoli. I'm sorry, I can go on forever about this. But the part of the body that really excites me most, after all, I'm a sexologist, is the genitals. And I'm not going to show you a picture of the penis. Don't worry about that. But the penis, you know, your heart keeps beating, your lungs keep breathing, but your penis, if you have one, it only does what it has to do when it has to do it. That's amazing. Isn't that creative process really amazing? You know, we are truly fearfully and wonderfully made. And yet we live in a culture of what is called expressive individualism, one which says that reality doesn't really matter. It's your desires that drive you. And that makes your body either or both a malleable piece of clay which can be shaped into whatever you want it, depending on your desires, or a commodity to be advertised on social media, exchanged in a nude, or used in casual sex for momentary orgasmic pleasure. All this in a liquid culture with no fixed morality or truth. Is there something better? I want to challenge you to think about this. As I bring God and sex together, I am so excited about this. You know, you look at the Bible and God says that your body has a unique identity. In the first book of the Bible, in Genesis, it said, you're created in the image of God, like a thumbprint of the God who created the stars and named them. That's exciting. And, you know, you're created male and female. That's completely different. And as I said, I love genitals, that beautiful fit between male and female, uniquely different and complementary beings. God values, you know, there's an innate identity of your creation and a dignity of the body. God values our body. He valued it so highly that his son Jesus was born of a woman with a human body. And he walked and he ate and he cried when his friend passed away. And he died as a human. And he rose as a human. I mean, that is so exciting. As an anatomist, to think that, you know, he died and he actually rose and he walked and he ate. And, you know, it's just so exciting. And Jesus valued human women. And we can get so many stories. A prostitute who everybody wanted stoned, but he valued her. A woman at the well when, you know, nobody was really talking to her, and he took the time, the Samaritan woman, to talk to her. And we can go on with so many stories. And the Apostle Paul puts it succinctly. You know, your body belongs to Jesus. Your body is the home of the Holy Spirit. Honor God. You know, when we honor God, when we honor our body, we honor the body of others. It raises our body to something really unique. We need to be teaching. We need to be speaking this. We need to understand this for ourselves. Well, moving on to sex. When we talk about sex, we sexologists, we talk about three things: desire, romantic love, and what happens when you're sexually intimate. Sexual desire is driven by testosterone in what we call your limbic system. It's a wanting for sex. Falling in love. Falling in love. I'm sure most of you have done it at some time. That heart palpitating, pupil dilating feeling. What a wonderful feeling that is. Driven by the chemical dopamine mainly. And basically, with a name like that, you will understand falling in love is the dopiest thing you've ever done in your life. Serotonin levels go down, same as obsessive compulsive behavior. It's a strong emotion. Falling in love, desire are strong emotions and feelings. But sexual intimacy is a binding act. Different chemicals, oxytocin, vasopressin, they bind you. You know, recently I was looking for this quote and I finally found the movie called Vanilla Sky, where David, the guy played by Tom Cruise, he sleeps with this girl, Julie, and then he moves on to another girl. And Julie's in love with him. And she says to him, to David, David, don't you know that when you sleep with someone, your body makes promises, even if you don't? And then surprisingly, she says, David, do you believe in God? And she drives off the bridge and commits suicide. It's your body makes promises. And we live in a culture of contradictory messages when it comes to sex. Sex is nothing. It's just sexual pleasure. It's a commodity, the casual hookup, the Tinder date. Devalues it, unfetters it from all constraints. This is a culture. Who cares? It's a toy, it's a commodity. But it is also everything, because our individual authenticity is sought through the public expression of my private inward sexuality. I am my desires. I am my sexuality. Can you see the very schizophrenic almost view there? Is it any surprise that we are all confused? You see, whoever is listening in, this is so exciting because we have a better message. God says, the Bible tells us that sexuality is a priceless, precious gift with a purpose and a place. Sexual intimacy in the context of marriage is a joyous thing. Adam in the Garden of Eden, God puts him to sleep, does a bit of a rib job, and he brings Eve to him. Adam's asleep, he opens his eyes, the first ever love at first sight, blind date, and he goes, oh, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Oh, beautiful girl I've ever seen. It helped me, never seen another one. But at that moment, we have desire, love, God's first arranged marriage. They were naked, no shame. Can you see the beauty there? Nakedness is total vulnerability. How many of you listening, you're tight and taut and everything's the right place. You just wait till you're 74 and things have been challenged by gravity and migrating down to the South Pole. Then you're really happy that you're with a man, and my husband and I married for 47 years, where you can say, oh, look, I remember where that wrinkle used to be. So, it's that nakedness of vulnerability is the place is where you can be one flesh, where there is no shame. And that means you're with a person who has promised to care for you till death part you. And through the Bible, we see this. In the Old Testament, God's love for his people. And in the Old Testament, my favorite book, 8 chapters of erotic lovemaking. Of course, I'm a sexologist. Of course, it would be my favorite. Place me like a seal over your heart. Place me like a seal on your arm, the wife says to her husband. For love is as strong as death. Its jealousy unyielding as a grave. It burns like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench it. The Bible says so. It is strong, it is powerful, it's a mighty flame. Flame is good in the right place, in the hearth, in the home. A flame out in the tinder dry bush. It's a bushfire. And that is what we are now doing. We have a better story. Marriage is precious to God, so precious that he models it on the relationship of Christ and the church. And like all good things, it comes with a handle with care warning. 3 times in Song of Songs it says, be careful. You see, when we practice sex as it is meant to be, an act of ultimate other-focused intimacy, the eros becomes a joyous union. We honor and respect our body and the value of our spouse, and we enjoy that intimacy of total vulnerability and total trust. So where does this lead us? Where to from here? Consider, this may be our cultural moment to mount a paradoxical countercultural view of human sexuality, which our culture is hungering for. One modeled on the words of a God who actually created sex. One where the human body, rather than being a worthless bit of flotsam floating aimlessly in a liquid culture, has an innate dignity, and identity given by the very Creator. And sexual intimacy in this naked, no shame, vulnerable, trusting relationship, in its procreative and recreational, God made it fun, recreational, uniting role modeled on that eternal relationship is totally fulfilling. May I invite you then, if you found anything we've talked about exciting or challenging, or the plans of marriage and family, find someone you know and have a chat about it. Have a chat, because maybe if God's got something to say about sex, He might have something exciting to say about the rest of your life. Why not check it out? And please talk to your children about a better story. Please. And that's a book that we've written. I've written a whole lot of books, but that's one called Talking Sex by the Book. Talk to your children. Just help them to understand the role of eros and intimacy in healthy relationship. And may I leave you just with this verse from the Bible. We as sinners, we are loved and forgiven. In a world that says, oh, love is just love, we worship a God who loved so much. This is love. Not that we love God, but that He loved us and He sent His Son as a sacrifice, an atoning sacrifice for us. I would like to invite you all to explore this. We've talked about sex, but there's so much more that you can learn from the Word of God. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Patricia, for that very engaging talk. We've got a few questions that have come in, and so let's get into that. Are you saying that sex is a good thing? How can that be?
Sex is a good thing. I just had to talk to you very quickly about something that happened to me when I was doing a study leave at Kinsey Institute. You might have heard of Kinsey, the premier sexology institute. And the professor, the head of I won't give his name, he asked me, Patricia, how can you be a sex researcher and also be a Christian? Isn't that kind of, completely opposite? And I said, you know what, John? Oops, I've given his name. I said, you know what, John? You and I both research and study sex. But you know what? I have a relationship with the creator of it. And that's what makes it so good, because God made it. When God made humans, He could have just made it such that when you want a baby, you just send off a note to the Department of Baby Making and you get one in the kangaroo pouch. But that's not the way God made it. He made the genitals to be full of nerve endings. And, the clitoris is the only organ that just doesn't do anything else other than hangs around having fun. God could have just taken it off the design, but He didn't. See, God created sex with that go out, make babies, but you're going to have great fun. And then He creates good boundaries. You see, good things come with good boundaries. And that's what God gives us when it comes to sex. So have fun, people. God made it to have fun. But there's good boundaries. And that one man, one woman, naked, no shame, is the absolute best place. Trust me, I have 47 years experience.
I trust you. I'm not going to argue with you, that's for sure. You talked a little bit about your book, about helping children understand sex and making sure we talk to our children. Two things, maybe just give us a teaser of what's in that book. So how can we talk to our children? And what if we feel a bit awkward about talking to our children? Any tips for that?
Most people are awkward about talking about sex. Many reasons. Many of us have had no teaching on sex when we were growing up. So you're awkward about it anyway. And with apologies to all the ministry staff here, churches haven't done a great job about training people up to talk to their children about sex. So it's okay to be uncomfortable about it. But it is so important that you be the one who is proactive and take that role, which is why we wrote the books. So we have one for teenagers. It's called Teen Sex by the Book. It's the kind of book you give your teenager, they throw it away, and then they go back and take it and read it. So that's for teenagers, research-based. We've one with for 10 to 14-year-olds that does a lot of work on puberty. Extremely important that you talk to children before they go into puberty or during that time, because today we live in a culture that says puberty is almost like a disease. And if you don't like puberty, then, you're actually the other sex. So we need to be talking to our children about puberty. So that's called Growing Up by the Book. But then we were asked by people that, we need to start talking to children when they're in primary school. Because sadly, even at primary school level, kids are being exposed to porn and to gender ideology. So we wrote a set of books called Birds and Bees by the Book. Then when I thought I had totally retired from writing last year, then I was approached by my publishers and they said, people were asking for a how-to book. You've got all these books for the children. Now, how do we use them? So Talking Sex by the Book, the one I showed the picture of, is meant for how do parents, grandparents, carers actually use these books.
Great. So it's going to be full of some excellent tips for us.
That's right. And you have to be the one who does it. We can't leave it to the school. You can't leave it to youth groups. Parents have to do it.
So I feel like you're saying if you feel a bit awkward, step into that space anyway.
Yeah, just do it.
All right. Now, Patricia, changing tack a little bit. People who have been sexually abused, some people have been horribly sexually abused. Is there a way of us helping them, or is there hope for them of enjoying sex again?
Yeah. The first thing to understand is that, yes, this is a really sad and awful thing to happen. And it does leave really long-lasting, deep scars in the body. As if anyone who's talked to someone who has had it happen to them, the scars are there. Now, we have, and I'm switching now to science mode for a moment, we have what we call neuroplasticity, which means our brains are capable of rewiring. Now, it won't happen overnight because these are deep-seated hurts and feelings. However, with really good counseling, slowly, it can be healed and you can just rewire good intimacy into the brain. It won't happen overnight. It will take time. And this is where the church has a very strong role, because we are a home for broken people. We are all broken people. And so we have that home of love and care that we can offer people and walk with them. That compassion is so important. It is possible, it will take time. But we as a church are the ones who can just be that hospital for broken people, which we are.
So there is hope, rewiring can happen, and the church has a fundamental role to play in being a helpful community in that. All right, let's again just change a little bit. I think this question's asking about how does it play out in a marriage, good sex, play out in a marriage that's effectively celibate, in a marriage where there isn't much sex happening?
Yeah, well, one of the big problems here is, how long do I have? I can talk for an hour on this. How we understand sex. How do we understand sex? Sexual intimacy is not equal to intercourse. Sadly, people think, oh, we are only having intercourse once a month, so, we are not having sex. Wrong. Intimacy is everything. In 1 Corinthians, I think it's 7, it says, husband, your body belongs to the wife. Wife, your body belongs to the husband. I tell guys when I talk to couples with this kind of, I'm in an asexual marriage. And I say, look, gentlemen, you are more than your genitals. Ladies, you are more than your clitoris and your vulva. You have a whole body to enjoy. So enjoy whole body intimacy. Sometimes I'm asked how many times should a couple have sex? And I say at least 3 times a day. In the morning when you get up and you have that good morning kiss, I like the look on some of your faces, and in the afternoon when you return from work and you have a good hug, and in the night, that pash before going to bed, you've had sex 3 times. Intimacy. So you can have a very good marriage even if you never have intercourse. And it happens. If a husband or a wife has got some physical problem like diabetes or high blood pressure or medication, and you can't get an erection, so you can't have intercourse. Who cares? You've got a whole body to enjoy. That's what we take.
Great. Well, Patricia, thank you so much. I think you've really helped us to see the value of the whole body, how God's made that, and how we can celebrate it and take great joy in it and in our sexuality. Thank you for joining us today. If this has piqued some interest in you and you want to know more, we'd really encourage you to get to know Jesus a bit more. As Patricia said, he has a great design for life, and the best way to meet Jesus is through his word, the Gospel of Mark. If you can get your hands on one of these, that would be a great thing to do. If you're not quite sure where to get one of these, reach out to your local church. If you don't have a local church, Google my name, Ron Irving, St Matt's, West Pennant Hills, and I'll get one of these to you. I'd love to do that. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And Patricia, thank you very much for your time with us today.